Welcome to On the Middle East, where we discuss the big and important stories in the region. My name is Amran Zaman and I am Al Monitor's chief correspondent based in London. Today I'll be looking at Turkey's relations with its historic foe Greece. After years of exchanging threats, tensions between the NATO allies have eased in recent months, thanks in part to US diplomacy, centered around the sale of military aircraft to both countries. The US leveraged those sales to get Turkey to drop its objections to Sweden's membership of NATO. The net result is that Turkey and Greece are talking again. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan paid an official visit to Greece in December, the first such visit in 65 years. Greece's Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis is due to travel to Ankara on May 13 to meet with Erdogan, part of what the Turkish leader has called a new era. Joining us from Ankara to discuss these developments is Greek academic Ioannis Grigoriadis, who heads the Turkey program at the Athens-based Hellenic Foundation for European and Foreign Policy. Dr. Grigoriadis also teaches politics at Ankara's Bilkent University. So welcome to our program. It's great to have you with us today, Ioannis.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Amber.
So you have your Prime Minister coming to Ankara, where you're presently, and he's going to be meeting with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on Monday. Erdogan has called this a new era in relations. Is it really a new era? What's going on between Turkey and Greece? Is it really love now, after years of exchanging threats and fears among Turkey's NATO allies of conflict between these two neighbors?
Well, if we look into the content of the relations, I don't think that we can expect a breakthrough. Although it is important to note that the skirmishes that used to dominate the bilateral relationships are no longer there. So the dogfights in the Aegean have been reduced to a very, very low level. There are no acrimonies, there are no harsh exchanges between the two sides that used to dominate Greek-Turkish relations until last year. So this is something important to note. What the Turkish president may mean, I think, as a new era, may refer to building a new personal relationship between the two leaders. I think that was something important, that was something missing during the first term of the Mitsotakis administration, since Mitsotakis came to power replacing Alexis Tsipras. Apparently, there was a better relationship between Tsipras and Erdogan. And when Mitsotakis came to power, there was no good rapport between the two sides. And I think this contributed to the deterioration of the relationship between the two countries. There was a sharp decline in the relationship between Greece and Turkey. And I think that this was also due to the fact that there was a breach in confidence or communication between the two sides. The most important issue to expect, the most important improvement to expect from that visit is to consolidate this improvement in the communication between the two leaders, but also between the two ministries and the civil societies and the business circles of the two countries, which I think is very important, even though the two sides may agree that they cannot resolve the difficult issues that have been outstanding for decades anyway. So we can try to achieve smaller results and hope that achieving the smaller results will eventually prepare a ground to address the real big issues that have been waiting for so long.
So we need to remind our audience, obviously, what those big issues are. And also, I mean, beyond what you described as a sort of lack of chemistry between these leaders that you say existed between Cyprus, who led Syriza, the main opposition party, right? Beyond that, though, obviously we're talking about a broader context of what's going on in the region, etc., the Eastern Mediterranean. I mean, can you just run us through the main problems? What is it that caused so much friction that people were concerned about conflict between Greece and Turkey?
I think that it all started back in 2017 when the latest attempt to resolve the Cyprus problem failed. There was the Crown Montana conference that, despite the expectations of many, failed to deliver a comprehensive solution to Cyprus problem. And from that point onward, the lack of solution in Cyprus and, of course, the discovery of energy, fields, like natural gas fields in the Eastern Mediterranean, and the initiatives of the Republic of Cyprus, Israel, and Egypt to monetize this reserves brought about a harsh reaction by Turkey, which of course is a derivative of the Cyprus problem, because Turkey doesn't recognize the Republic of Cyprus, recognizes the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, and nobody else recognizes. And then there are complications on the continental shelf exclusive economic zone issues. Turkey stands at odds with the international community on this. But I think that something which was very important is that the Turkish side identified the position of the Republic of Cyprus with the position of Greece. So it kind of decided to expand the scope of the conflict and the dispute by signing a memorandum of understanding with the government of Libya, the Tripoli-based government of Libya, which is internationally recognized, which advanced what has been called in Turkey as Mavi Vatan, this blue homeland doctrine, which really added a new dimension to the maritime disputes between Greece and Turkey, because it came to the point of disputing the right not of smaller Greek islands or rocks to have continental shelf or exclusive economic zone, but even Crete. So like the line drawn between Libya and Turkey in the Eastern Mediterranean was a big blow against Greek territorial waters and continental shelf and exclusive economic zone. And this escalated the conflict in bilateral relations to unprecedented levels. You may remember that there were some exploratory sort of operations by Eritrea in the Eastern Mediterranean. The two fleets came too close to each other.
Yes, it was pretty scary, and we were writing those every day.
Exactly. It was August of 2020.
And you had these two blocks emerging with Greece, Egypt, the UAE.
Exactly.
The opponents of the Tripoli regime on the one hand, and obviously Cyprus, and then Turkey and Tripoli, and I mean, it was really...
And then France was involved as well. There were some sort of agreements between Greece and France.
Yes, the military.
So it was a very sort of
why do you
disconcerting environment.
Escalated? Because it clearly did. And my understanding is that, first of all, Turkey recognized that this was isolating it regionally at a time when also its economy was beginning to falter. And I mean, my understanding is that part of this big rapprochement between Turkey and Greece, the current rapprochement, was partly devised by the United States, who very cleverly leveraged the proposed sale of F-35s to Greece and Turkey's demands for F-16 to get Turkey to, first of all, drop its objections to Sweden's membership, and of course, to get the US Congress to drop its objections to the sale of the F-16s. And of course, one of the reasons cited by several congressmen for not proceeding with the sale was tensions with Greece and wanting assurances that Turkey would stop threatening Greece, as they described it. And lo and behold, we saw those overflights over the Greek islands end, and this new era of, the new era as Erdogan puts it, of actually beginning to actually communicate Do you agree that the US was kind of pivotal in this?
I think that the US had a strong interest in mitigating the conflict between Greece and Turkey, and even approaching, supporting a détente or rapprochement. Just look around the region, in a sense, what's happened in Ukraine, Russia's invasion, what's happening in the Middle East in the last few months. So in that respect, it is important that yet another front, especially within NATO, kind of does not emerge. And as you said very correctly, Turkey realizes that it cannot afford so many conflict zones, sort of like it needed to reduce the fronts. It was competing against regional players. So in that respect, the UAE, Egypt moved to the other side. So they were no longer rivals of Turkey, but they were emerging as potential new partners. And in that respect, Turkey also realized that escalating with Greece was something counterproductive. And there was the opportunity of the earthquake that hit southeastern Turkey and southern Turkey that provided the opportunity for a breakthrough in the relationship. And I have to note something that we have studied at the LIAMEP together with Istanbul Policy Center. We ran a series of 5 opinion surveys in Greece and Turkey. We ran the same questionnaire in both countries. During the escalated sort of debates and sort of this during the conflict between the two leaders, we noted that the public opinion was not following this polarized and sort of agitated debates. The public opinion was much more balanced. It was always in support of peaceful means for conflict resolution. The kind of views of each other were not following this rather aggressive rhetoric that dominated the relationship for some years. And this, of course, made it clear that when the leaders would decide to shift their rhetoric, the public would be there to endorse that. And I think this is what happened.
Well, that's such a good point, Ioannis, and it sort of brings me to the matter of tourism, actually, which I think has played a very positive role in helping the people get to know each other. I remember back in the early 2000s when Turkey, when the Erdogan first came to power, and you had the opening of full membership talks, which had actually cascading effects on Turkey's relations with Greece. And I remember when Karamanlis came for the wedding of Erdogan's daughter, Esra. In fact, he was one of the witnesses, wasn't he?
Yes, yes.
And I remember all these Athenian bourgeois ladies coming to Istanbul and just delighting in the restaurants and the shopping. And there was such an influx, wasn't there? People coming to the patriarchate to have their children baptized by the patriarch. I mean, it was a great moment. And now, interestingly, partly because of the terrible economic situation in Turkey, so many Turks are preferring to holiday in Greece, aren't they? And
there is an interesting trend which is facilitated by a visa agreement, which of course involves the European Union, because Greece is part of the Schengen zone. So any visa arrangement has to be approved by the European Commission. So there has been an agreement to facilitate the visit of Turkish tourists to a number of Eastern Aegean islands. So instead of applying through the normal visa channels, they will be in a position to get a visa on arrival in the islands, and this visa will last for 10 days.
Yeah, they love going to Greece. It's cheaper.
Well, it is true that if you look into the prices in Bodrum or in Cheshme, the nearby Greek islands are not the most expensive Greek tourist destinations. So I'm not sure whether Mykonos is cheaper than Bodrum, but Kos is definitely cheaper than Bodrum, or Chios is definitely cheaper than Cheshme.
Yeah.
And this, of course, creates a new incentive. So people want to travel, and of course, facilitating the visa application removes a big obstacle.
No, I think it's great. And also the Turkish series are very popular, aren't they, in Greece, these mini series?
That's true. There is a lot of civil society contact that was unfortunately disrupted during the pandemic. So the pandemic limitations, many of the ferries connecting the islands with the Aegean coast of Turkey were interrupted. So traveling became more difficult. So I think now we have a big opportunity to recover the time lost and embark on new partnerships and new collaboration. And of course, tourism is a very, very important opportunity. One can think of developing joint tourist packages, including Greek and Turkish destinations for Chinese or American tourists, the cruise boats. There are a lot of sectors whereby one can think of win-win solutions for both countries. And of course, tourism is one of the biggest businesses, one of the biggest industries in both countries. So any collaboration is going to improve the condition of the economy in both countries.
But also, I mean, it's important to understand that, as you said, well, from the US point of view, they want the friction between these two countries is, of course, not a good thing. But can you explain to us also why it's bad for Europe if Greece and Turkey aren't getting along? Especially at the time with the conflict in Gaza, in Ukraine. Why is it important?
Well, even though European Union and Turkey have been running an accession negotiation without any success for decades, EU-Turkey relations remain very important for many reasons, not least of which is migration, right? Exactly. Turkey remains a NATO member, remains a very important security player on the borders of Europe. And given the situation in Eastern Europe and in the Middle East, the European Union needs to be in a position to negotiate and talk to Turkey. And of course, any problems that involve Greece and Cyprus, which are member states of the European Union. So in that respect, it's important to highlight that the EU will eventually have to take the side of its members, right? But this will come at a loss for Europe's regional and global role. So it is important to find ways to either solve the problems or find a way to manage them so that the bigger problems that exist, because in a sense, we may discuss why we have failed to solve the Cyprus problem for decades, but the Cyprus problem is not at the moment generating insecurity or instability.
No, but
this is not a reason not to work hard to solve it, because it may eventually generate instability. But right now there are emergency issues like in Gaza, in Ukraine, and there it is important for the southeastern flank of NATO to appear united.
That's and you mentioned migration. I'm sorry to jump in again. I keep interrupting you, but you remember when Erdogan threatened to flood Europe with refugees, and he sent all these Afghans and Pakistanis to the Greek border. That was a very tense moment. And as you say, this is cooperation between good relations between Turkey and Greece for that alone, even because we know how important it is to Europe to keep these people out. And that's why they're paying Turkey billions of dollars to be a gatekeeper.
Of course. And we're having European elections in a month, and it's very likely that the far right is going to have historic highs. And migration and the refugee question is one of the key issues. And it's impossible to find any way to manage the problem without a kind of working relationship with the Turkish government, even though one may not agree with everything the Turkish government says or does on this. It is important to be in a position of dialogue and negotiation. And in that respect, of course, Greek-Turkish relations play a big role, whether the Greek Coast Guard in the Eastern Aegean and the Turkish Coast Guard in the Western Turkish coast on the Aegean collaborate, and they are trying to work against the smugglers that operate there. This is crucial for European security and for Turkish security too.
Oh, totally. But on Cyprus, as you said, that could generate insecurity again. Can you just bring us up to speed on where we are with Cyprus? Because there's a new envoy now, and there seems to be some movement after years of absolutely nothing other than, tensions. What is going on with Cyprus?
The problem is, as I said, the latest opportunity was missed in Crans-Montana.
Yeah, but that's
ever since Turkey ever since Turkey has and the Turkish Cypriot leadership, which is now a more nationalistic one, it's Ersin Tatar, not Mustafa Akıncı. They have said that they will never discuss again on the basis of the United Nations Security Council agreements, which advise a bizonal, bicommunal federal solution for Cyprus. They want that the Greek Cypriots or the Republic of Cyprus recognizing the sovereign equality of the Turkish Cypriots, and then they will start discussions. Which, of course, if you do this, then the discussion you will have would be about a partition or a confederal solution. And this is something that the Republic of Cyprus doesn't agree with. It is possible, I don't know, that the improvement in the relations between Greece and Turkey may convince the Turkish side to give another chance to the, let's say, to accept participation in negotiations on a bizonal, bicommunal federal solution of Cyprus. Which, of course, and I understand the point of the Turkish point there, will have to be time limited or sort of solution oriented so that we don't waste yet another sort of phase whereby we discuss this, but we don't come to result. So in that respect, the issue has to be resolved. But on the other hand, it is important to maintain the framework that the international community has agreed as the framework for solution in Cyprus. And I'm not saying this because this is what has been agreed, because I do think that even a solution that points to another direction, a partition, will be very difficult to agree upon. There's no silver bullet here, like there's no easy solution. And I think the work that has been done on making Cyprus a working bizonal, bicommunal federal state is very important. Like the two sides have agreed almost 90% of what a bizonal, bicommunal federal Cyprus would be. And it would be a big shame to waste all these discussions and then start from scratch to discuss a completely different framework for a solution. It will take another decade or so.
Cypriot president, well, relatively new Cypriot president, is more open to that than his predecessor because, you know, the Turkish side blames the predecessor for the collapse of the talks in Montana.
This is true, but it is important to note that the current president used to be the foreign minister.
Yes, I know.
Of the president. So he's kind of involved in this, but of course he's a new leader and he's not bound by what happened back in Crown Montana. So my hope is that this improvement in the bilateral relationship between Greece and Turkey will create a window of opportunity, because although the Cyprus problem, from the Greek point of view at least, is considered to be an international issue, not a bilateral issue between Greece and Turkey, it has always had a very negative effect on Greek-Turkish relations. If you look into the history of Greek-Turkish relations, Greece and Turkey join NATO together, they're allies, they have a common security threat, which is the Soviet Union, and then the Cyprus problem breaks out, and then the attacks on the Greek minority in Istanbul happen, like there's pressure on the Muslim minority in Greece. So there is a negative spiral that eventually involves the maritime disputes, the minority problems, and we're still here. I think that any progress in Cyprus will have an immediate positive effect on Greek-Turkish relations.
Well, we're nearing the end of the program. I just want to put two last questions to you. One is the opening of the inauguration, let's say, as a mosque of the Kora church in Istanbul. It's been noted that the timing was really bizarre, given that Mitsotakis is coming. It happened precisely a week before he came, and a day after the Greek Orthodox Easter was celebrated. And of course, this created a lot of anger, I understand, in Greece, and a lot of criticism of the government for failing to respond as harshly as the people wanted it to. What do you think informed this decision? You're sitting in Ankara. Why would Turkey do this now? Why couldn't they have waited, setting aside the whole, rationale of actually doing this, of converting what was a museum into a mosque when you have thousands of mosques already, setting that aside in diplomatic terms?
I agree that this is an unfortunate development. As you said, unlike the Hagia Sophia, which was an icon of the city of Constantinople and of the Ottoman city of Istanbul, that was converted by Fatih Sultan Mehmed himself into a mosque. So there are a lot of symbolism behind that. Hora is not an important Islamic monument. It is famous because it happens to be the maybe second to Hagia Sophia only Byzantine monument of Constantinople surviving today in this modern city of Istanbul, because by chance, by luck, almost all the mosaics survived. So it has a very extraordinary position in the history of art, in the history sort of Byzantine iconography. It is really sort of a masterpiece. And this is one of the reasons why it was converted into a museum in the 1940s. As you said, there are a lot of mosques in the area where Hora is based. Actually, the local community disagreed with this because the local community depended on tourist income. And they are very much concerned that this conversion is going to reduce the number of tourists visiting. There's a very beautiful square with cafes and sort of tourist shops that will always swarming with sort of visitors from different parts of the world. But as you said, I think that the rationale behind the decision is not linked to Greek-Turkish relations. Of course, the Turkish government should have thought about this as well, because of course it will have repercussions, and the Greek public opinion is very, very upset about this. But I think it needs to be understood in the context of Turkish domestic political dynamics. The decision to convert Hora into a mosque was linked to a court decision that was made a few weeks after the conversion of Hagia Sophia into a mosque, which canceled the decision of Inonu government of the 40s, which removed the Vakıf status of Hora and turned it into a museum. So then the government, like Erdogan, said that since the court decided that the decision is invalid, we will restore the building to its prior status, which is of course Ottoman Vakıf and the mosque, right? So they issued the presidential decree, but the decree was not implemented, as you said, for 4 years because there was a restoration going.
Yes. Yes.
So there was this limbo, and many people hope that maybe they change their mind, that they just restore and then they forget the conversion. But I think the recent election results played a big role.
Oh,
and the rise of because
do
the Islamists took an upper hand, sort of the Yeniden Refah Partisi performance. These are the people that have been pushing for such things, kind of, let's say, to reenact conquests. So in a sense, to see that, like many of the buildings that the secularists had conquered from the Islamists and converted them into mosques can be now recovered by the Islamists.
That's a very important point that I missed in my story yesterday when I was writing about this. You're right. There is that
I think
pressure,
but the timing is more linked to this dismal performance of Akbar Party in the local elections and the attempt to win some sort of goodwill among the Islamists.
After the visit still, no? I mean, what would...
No, I agree. And the Greek Prime Minister noted this, and he said also that I'm going to raise the issue in the meeting.
Yeah, he did.
So, but what I could suggest on this is that I understand that it would be very difficult for President Erdogan to take a step back during the meeting on this issue, right? Especially what happened. But on the other hand, there are a lot of monuments in Greece and Turkey that wait to be rescued and restored. There are a lot of Ottoman monuments in Greece and Greek Orthodox monuments in Turkey that the two sides can decide to restore and sort of present again to the international sort of community. And this is going to be an important part of the positive agenda. So we may wait for a new decision on Hora to happen in the medium term. I don't think, given the political circumstance in Turkey, I don't think that this is going to be anytime soon. unfortunately, my opinion, but there is a lot of area for cooperation in the field of heritage protection that shouldn't be missed.
Well, that brings me to my final question, which is, as you said, Erdogan did very poorly in this election, the last local elections, and the CHP, the main opposition secular party, emerged victorious for the first time in a very long time, in decades. So do you believe that this will, as some people speculate, force Erdogan to review his sort of autocratic policies and maybe revert to those golden years in the early 2000s when we saw those EU membership talks begin? Do you, sitting in Ankara, sense any shift in that direction, or is
there is a discussion about a softening, and there are these initiatives of meeting with the leader of the CHP, which is something that should have been happening for years, but wasn't happening. And now that it happened, everybody's very excited about, right?
Yeah.
So I do think that there will be a new style in the administration of the government. But on the other hand, I would expect more evidence before I would say that there is a genuine shift into a new sort of policy. I mean, and there are a lot of things to be done. Like there are political prisoners that can be released, like Osman Kavala, Selahattin Demirtas. There are a lot of issues that can be done in order to signal a shift towards a new approach. But then, of course, this would address the government coalition dynamics and concerns, in a sense. Does MHP agree with this? How would the relationship develop? Is Erdogan in a position to cut its bonds with MHP and sort of restructure the government coalition? And how, of course, would CHP, the main opposition party, respond to that? Because there is a lot of sort of speculation among the opposition circles that this is a move by the government aiming to divide the front that today exists between the leader of the CHP, Özel, and the two mayors, like Imamoglu and Yavaş. Of course, it's too early to discuss about the presidential elections. We have a lot of years before the next scheduled election, but this discussion has been kind of brought forward by government media, and I think this may reflect an attempt to sow some discord among the opposition circles that have just won this amazing and unprecedented victory, as you said, because it's really important to remember that it's not just that the opposition managed to win the elections in the big municipalities. It's the first time that CHP has been the first party in any election since the late 70s.
No, exactly. And as Yildiray Or, a very prominent Turkish columnist, said to me recently, if Turkey were Russia, there's no way the opposition could have won an election. So
exactly.
It's a hopeful time, and we look forward to seeing your Prime Minister in Ankara. And thank you so much for joining us today, Ioannis, and I look forward to further conversations with you.
You're most welcome. My pleasure, Amber.
And this brings us to the end of this episode of On the Middle East. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Ioannis. And please don't forget to visit our website, www.al-monitor.com, for in-depth coverage of the Middle East and North Africa. Thank you and goodbye.